The desert winds of avarice carried whispers of chains, of cries swallowed by sand, and of broken spirits hidden in shadows. Among those voices was that of Selira, a young woman born into captivity. She had never known a day of freedom, for she had been marked at birth with the crest of the Veran aristocrats, destined not for labor in the fields, but for a different kind of bondage. Selira had been raised as a personal slave, her existence reduced to the whims, appetites, and cruelties of her alien masters. Her body bore no shackles, but her spirit carried the weight of years of humiliation. She had been forced to smile when ordered, to laugh when commanded, and to kneel when her heart screamed to stand. The Veran nobles paraded her as though she were a prized possession rather than a person, a beautiful ornament whose worth lay only in her obedience. Yet beneath her calm, subservient exterior burned an ember that refused to die. She dreamed of freedom, though she dared not speak it aloud. It was during the Veran conquest of the outer colonies that Selira's path crossed that of a human. His name was Marcus Hale, a soldier from Earth who had fought in the resistance. When captured, most humans were either executed or enslaved. Marcus, however, was given to a Veran lord as a curiosity. Humans were considered both primitive and dangerous, making him an exotic trophy. That lord happened to be Selira's master. She remembered the day Marcus was dragged into the manor, bruised but unbroken. His eyes, a deep storm gray, scanned the room not with submission, but with a defiance she had never seen before. Even bound in chains, he carried himself as though he were the one in command. The Veran lord introduced Marcus with a sneer, mocking his human stubbornness, and then dismissed him to the slave quarters. Selira, curious and drawn, found excuses to pass near him in the days that followed. Marcus treated her differently from the Veran nobles. When she brought him food, he thanked her quietly. When she whispered warnings about the lord's cruel temper, he listened with intent instead of dismissing her words. One night, after a savage beating left him barely able to move, Selira slipped into the quarters with a stolen vial of healing salve. She knelt beside him, tending his wounds, and for the first time she saw someone look at her not as a tool or toy, but as a person. "Why do you help me?" Marcus had whispered, his voice rough but steady. "Because you don't look at me like the others do," she admitted, her hands trembling as she worked the salve into his bruises. "You see me. No one ever does." That night a bond began to form, fragile but real. They shared stolen conversations in the dark, moments of laughter hushed so the overseers wouldn't hear. Marcus spoke of Earth, of oceans that stretched farther than the eye could see, of forests alive with birdsong, of skies that rained freely instead of burning with desert heat. Selira listened with tears in her eyes, aching for a world she had never known but longed to touch. The turning point came when rebellion ignited. Human and alien slaves alike rose against their masters in scattered uprisings. In the chaos, Marcus seized an opportunity. He fought with the fury of someone who refused to be broken, breaking free of his chains and turning the tide in the manner. Selira, torn between fear and hope, followed him into the storm of fire and blood. Together they cut through the darkness, Marcus defending with strength and Selira guiding him through the labyrinth of corridors she had memorized since childhood. When they reached the manor's gates, Selira faltered. The world beyond those gates was unknown, dangerous, filled with uncertainty. Her whole life had been dictated, controlled. Could she truly step into freedom? Marcus noticed her hesitation, and instead of dragging her forward like another master might, he simply extended his hand. "You don't have to come," he said softly. "But if you do, you'll never be anyone's slave again. Not while I live." Tears blurred her vision as she reached for his hand. For the first time, she chose. They fled across deserts and through ruined towns, hunted by the remnants of the Veran forces. At night, under the alien stars, they spoke of dreams. Marcus swore he would see Earth again, and Selira confessed her secret wish, not just to be free, but to be loved for who she was rather than what she could offer. Slowly, what began as companionship blossomed into something deeper. When fear consumed her, Marcus held her. When despair weighed him down, Selira reminded him of the strength he had already shown. They became each other's anchor. Months later, the war shifted. Humans, rallying with other oppressed races, pushed back against the Veran Empire. Marcus and Selira found themselves not just survivors, but part of a greater cause. Selira, once voiceless, now spoke to others who had been enslaved, urging them to fight for their dignity. She was no longer the obedient ornament the nobles had fashioned. She had become a flame, fierce and unyielding. It was after a battle, when the dust of victory still clung to their skin, that Marcus made his vow. They stood in the ruins of a liberated outpost, the sky bruised with twilight. He looked at her not with pity, not with desire, but with reverence. "I freed you from chains," he said quietly, "but you freed me from despair. I don't want you to be mine as a possession. I want you to be my partner, my wife." Selira's breath caught. Marriage was a concept foreign to her world. Slaves did not marry. They were given and taken. But she understood what Marcus was offering, not ownership, but equality. A life shared. With trembling hands, she touched his face, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath her palm. "All my life, I belong to others," she whispered. "If I belong anywhere now, let it be with you." And so, amid the rubble of a broken empire, they bound themselves not with chains, but with love. Their union was not celebrated with grandeur, but with sincerity. Fellow freed slaves gathered, offering blessings in their own tongues. Marcus gave her a simple ring fashioned from scavenged metal, and Selira, eyes shining with tears, accepted it as though the most priceless jewel in the galaxy. Their life together was not without struggle. Scars from their past haunted them both. Selira woke some nights in terror, memories of her former owners pressing down on her, while Marcus bore the burden of survivor's guilt. Yet in those moments, they held each other tighter, whispering promises of tomorrow. Slowly, the wounds healed. Where there had once been silence, there was now laughter. Where there had been chains, there was now choice. Years later, Selira would stand on the shores of Earth itself, the ocean's roar filling her ears. Marcus's arm was around her waist, their child chasing waves with wild delight. The water touched her toes, cool and real, and she closed her eyes to let the wind wash over her. She remembered the girl she had been, the personal slave who lived only to please others, who had never dared to dream. That girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had been freed, cherished, and loved beyond measure. She leaned her head against Marcus's shoulder, her voice a whisper lost in the sea breeze. "I'm free," she said, and for the first time in her life, the words were true.